of $3 billion, you consider that the general fund property tax is worth maybe 70, 80, 90 million. It's woefully low, and sales taxes approach $1 trillion of the budget. That's where the issue is in both counties. It's the fact that they have not gotten the sales tax revenues that put them in this hole. So that's where there's going to be some really pain in how to balance the budgets. In Nassau County, they have to balance the budget because of NIFA. In Suffolk, there's no governmental restraint that requires the county to deal with its deficit, and quite frankly, the deficit has been kicked down the roads since when Steve Levy was county exec. I know that Malone has inherited it, but he's had almost 9 years to deal with the budget, which has escaped his grasp. So it's really the counties that are going to be impacted. Any government municipality that gets its funding from income tax revenues or sales tax revenues are going to find deficits in those revenue collections.
So the
Do you have
next
any
question,
outstanding questions, Frank?
yes, the next question is this whole thing a short-term problem? Will the economy adjust to these new realities?
It takes really bold leadership, but it's going to take, my guess, well into 2021 for the economies to start rebounding to a point where they don't need federal bailout money to help localities, to help individuals. I mean, just look at the MTA for a moment. 74,000 employees, 8,000 on the Long Island Railroad, and they got a $12 billion budget deficit. And on top of that, they're waiting for $1 billion that congestion pricing is going to bring. That congestion pricing, the federal government won't sign off on it, but for heaven's sakes, the roads are now getting so crowded because people won't ride the railroads because they don't deem them safe. And they're going to clog up the city, and then the city's not collecting congestion pricing. And quite frankly, I was never for congestion pricing, and I'm even strongly against it now because people can't afford to pay it. So the MTA has a major problem. That's going to be a major impact on employees. Nassau County is 29,000 people that NIFA had said that they would have to raise taxes 60% or lay off 2,900 people to bring their budget in balance. Those are the serious questions that we're looking at right now. It's going to take at least a year for us to even begin turning the corner on this.
Assuming that we have a new administration in January, which is a possibility, how long what I was going to say, how could we make the whole country more disciplined on this pandemic so that we get a 1% reading on our new cases like we have in New York, and then we can really open up? How long do you think that would take?
Well, I think the reality is in some of these states, the governors have to really clamp down, on opening up businesses in order to get a hold of COVID. My concern is, there's a theory out there which the left really subscribes to. It came out of Stony Brook economists, which is the modern monetary theory. And what that basically says is the federal government just should continue printing out dollars and we'll worry about inflation later. And that's really a road to disaster because once inflation takes hold, and what inflation is our dollars don't go as far to spend goods and services. And once that happens and manufacturing starts cutting back, and when manufacturing cuts back, we have a higher spin-off. Just to throw in something that we haven't talked about, the aircraft industry, airline industry, they're looking at between 40 and 60,000 people being laid off come October 1st if the federal government doesn't bail them out. And for every one airline job that's lost, another 1.5 jobs in the surrounding economy are lost. So we could say if the airlines aren't bailed out, we could be losing another 100,000 jobs in the country. And certainly in this region with 3 major airports, Newark, Kennedy, and LaGuardia, we can see major layoffs there, which will impact all the surrounding businesses. So there are some major trials and tribulations ahead. We don't need to have to deal with inflation with this modern monetary theory. We have to start thinking creatively, just stopping printing money. And that's my fear of this Green New Deal thing. It's only about printing money.
You know, buddy, from what I'm hearing from you is that we're looking at not 2021, but 2022 before we're starting to get stabilized.
You know, I wouldn't argue with you on that point. You know, we're seeing how quickly this economy really went down the drain when everything was closed, and how we're opening it up so slowly, and even with a 10% unemployment rate, which we've endured since the Great Recession. The economy is not turning around. And the major factor is really consumers. Consumerism is 70% of the economy. And again, I go back to the fear factor. When the fear factor of people going out and engaging socially and economically is gone, and that will only come with with therapeutics for the COVID and also the vaccine, they're not coming out and spending. And if they don't come out and spend, then this economy isn't going to turn around. And that could take at least 6 months into next year when people feel comfortable about about a vaccine, and that could take a little time before that happens. I mean, the governor, Cuomo, wants to do setting up his own advisory board, which I think each governor should be doing to really vet the vaccine as they come out, to give people the confidence that if they take the vaccine, they won't die from it, and they have a chance to actually not get COVID, and therapeutics that if people do get it, the medications and the medical industry can keep them alive. Until those things have become common knowledge and people are confident with, then this economy is going to drag along. We are dragging along the bottom. You know, people talk a U-shaped recession and a V-shape. We're in the U-shape. We're on the bottom, crawling along until we turn it around.
I agree.
So the next question, again, relates back to something that you were speaking about earlier, manufacturing. And I'm just going to sort of make it a little bit more, the question was, should we be taking advantage of onshoring of development and manufacturing? But I think in a more larger sense, manufacturing was the economic hub for Long Island when I grew up here. What do you think will be the next one, if not onshoring of manufacturing?
Well, you know, I have to tell you, I mean, you know, actually, it was just about a year ago, I spent 12 days in China. You know, we went to Beijing and Xi'an and Shanghai and all the major cities, as well as some small little towns. And I have to tell you that China is gearing up and has tremendous housing for all its people, as well as manufacturing. There is a reason why Walt Disney does this manufacturing for its ribbons and hats in China. All right, and there's a reason for that, because Chinese labor is very inexpensive, and the Chinese government has to keep on providing jobs for its people. Otherwise, Xi Jinping is going to be supervising a crowd of very, very unhappy Chinese workers. So we in the United States have to say, how can we, you know, there is a cost in the U.S. for bringing manufacturing home. And I believe we should bring all our manufacturing home. I don't think we ought to be offshoring or sending it because it's cheaper. But then people who invest in the stock market want more profits. So businesses need more profits. So they go where labor is cheaper. And that's why we have in Asia, so many of our products are being manufactured in Asia.
I just want to point out to you,
Yeah.
one of the highest labor costs in the world is Germany.
Yep.
Germany has high quality products. They have full employment, basically high paid employees, and profits. How does that work, and why can't we be there?
Well, we should. I mean, even look at Israel, one of the top medical and technology advertisers. I was in Israel almost 2 years ago.
By the way, the biggest trading partners in Europe are Israel and Germany.
Yeah, and that's it, because what happens is you do your manufacturing, you hire locally to do it, you pay the wages that people need to live, and it gets recycled in the economy. And also you produce what other people want. I think just the whole idea that we couldn't find medical supplies because the the chain, the manufacturing chain started in China for this stuff. We really, businesses have to take a hard look at how we bring back manufacturing to the United States, pay the higher wages to the workers that we need in the U.S. And when people are making more money, they'll spend more money, and that drives a positive economic cycle. We have to get away from getting the cheapest labor for products in the U.S. because you Americans have demanded cheap prices, and that's why businesses go elsewhere. Americans have to understand, you want to have a strong economy, we got to pay people the right wages. Costs are going to go up, but so will your wages. That's the paradigm shift we need to see in the American economy.
Well, one of
So
the
let me
things,
ask one of these other questions, Ernie, before you chime in again. The focus seems to be restoring on the economic structure to what it was before the pandemic. How about creating a different type of economy, a knowledge economy? For instance, employment at Walmart and Amazon are booming, but could low-skilled restaurants workers find jobs in different industries?
There are reasons why uh, uh, the low skilled or low education, and I don't mean to say that insulting, it's a matter of fact, work in restaurants and tourism and hotels because they don't have the skill sets. A lot of the people work there, and we're proud of our immigration system and our immigrants coming in here, but a lot of them don't have the skill sets in order to access those jobs. Yes, we've already had a knowledge economy for a period of time. We're never going to get away from manufacturing, and we're never going to. Tourism on Long Island is almost $6 billion industry, and that's considering there's about 160 billion in the gross domestic product on Long Island. So that's like 5%. That's a big piece of the economy. Plus the 80,000 workers in tourism. They're almost 8% of the workforce. So we're always going to have a service sector economy, and we certainly can go to the knowledge economy and the technology, which we are already doing. But those come. The caveat is when you move from an economy that requires higher skill sets, more education, you leave more people behind and create greater income gaps, and that's something we don't want to do.
And you get to that telecommuting factor that I was talking about before, which I deal with as a software manufacturer. Best talent can be anywhere in the world, and it's very difficult to make enough money here to compete with that.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I'll give you, just to interject, my son just got a new job, and he can work from anywhere just on his computer.
Right.
And that's what we're going to see more of is that kind of work. And that's the knowledge-based economy, but that comes with pitfalls also. People now, you don't need high office space, commercial rents. What happens to the construction industry and real estate industry in major urban centers? They have to react to the fact that there's less of demand for commercial real estate. So, everything has unintended consequences that we have to take, economic consequences that we have to take a look at before we do something.
I want to get my this thought on the idea of working alone. Working alone has its liabilities. I was in the insurance business and I could work from my desk at home. I didn't need to report to the office. But I found if I went to the office and I met my fellow agents and the people who worked under me and the people who supervised the operation, I learned things I would not have known in my own home. So that is going to be a problem too in the future. What do you think of that?
Well, social interaction is very important in a workplace. But guess what? With GoToMeetings, with Zoom, you can have your social interaction with people and don't have to show up in an office. But I think that can see more.
It's not impromptu. I visited my friend Mike Critelli, who's the chairman of the board of Pitney Bowes, and he says people have places and nooks and crannies where there's no phones. They just hang out and have a cup of coffee together. He says there's probably more productivity there than when they're sitting at their desk.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But if we're talking about how do we reinvent an economy that we are less prone to pandemics, that's how we do it. And there have to be cultural changes if you want to adhere to the imperative that you don't want people to get sick and die from pandemics.
I have another question, and I think it's a sort of incendiary question because it does speak to the difference between the right and the left, I think. If we can't increase property taxes or expect growing sales taxes, don't we need increased money coming from the federal government, which would have to come from increased taxes from the wealthy 1% who have received such large tax breaks over the last 40 years?
Well, just remember something that, and there was a study that just came out. More Long Islanders benefited from the last tax act. I don't know, we talk a lot about the $10,000 limit on state and local taxes, but the increased standard deduction has helped more Long Islanders. And you're right, when you talk about more government spending, it's our money. I mean, it's our taxes that are paying for this. So there's a level. The top 1% can't pay for anything. Look, I'd be the first one to slap a lien on Mike Bloomberg's $15 billion. I don't have a problem with that. But I have a problem when you consider Long Island, what is wealthy? I remember during the Obama administration, and Congressman Israel fought and won. They wanted increased tax. They thought wealthy was $400,000 family income. And Steve Israel went and said, you can't make it that way because 400,000 is upper middle class on Long Island. So when we talk about taxing the 1%, there's a real slippery slope on where it starts taxing the upper middle class, which quite frankly drives suburban regions and even the cities. So we got to be careful about our taxation policy, and be very careful about how we throw around the 1%, tax the 1%. We got to be very careful, because once you start taxing, and in other places in this country where they can't even think about what $400,000 family income is, they think that we are rich and let's tax us. And the last thing is, there's a reason why New York State is the number 2 region in the country that sends billions and billions more to the federal government in tax revenues than we get back. So we got to be careful how we open up the Pandora's box about taxation.
Just to let you know, Biden threw that same number out recently, making a pledge that the taxes will not go up for anybody under 400,000.
Oh, please, I got a bridge
Same number
to show you. I mean, he's got Cortez saying we need billions of dollars for the Green New Deal. You know something? I have to tell you something, and I don't want to get involved in politics, but that ain't going to happen. As soon as he gets in, they're looking for money, and as soon as it gets into the Congress, we saw what Pelosi was capable of doing. Don't think twice, and bet the ranch that taxes won't go up for the upper middle class.
What about the idea that the union system in the United States has been broken? When we had strong unions, we had people that could survive without a paycheck for weeks at a time. My father was a union carpenter and had 6 children. My mother never worked outside the home until, well, the only time she ever worked for outside the home was she worked for the Republican Party. But otherwise, you were able to raise a family. And what happened with COVID is that when we had people laid off, they had no reserves. You would need about $50,000 that you could get it through either by cashing in stock or having cash on hand or some other liquid method of paying for things. If we had that kind of stability, we wouldn't be in the same boat that we are right now.
Well, that's what I said at my initial comments. Most people don't have 6 months worth of reserves to pay for their household, and and I know you didn't mean this, Ernie, but your mother worked hard. She was a homemaker. She raised a family. She just didn't draw a salary. So I know you didn't mean to say that people men and women who are homemakers.
I said she didn't work outside the home.
I know.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Oh, it's fun to put words in your mouth, Ernie.
All right. Do we have any more questions, Frank?
No more questions, but just to follow up on what you were saying, not only does the current American family not have a nest egg or a cushion of a liquid savings account, but they're in hock.
Yep.
Thanks to the consumerism and the debt-driven culture that we've seen for the last many decades now. It's not about what you can afford on a monthly basis, based on the terms, and that's the new how you can afford something.
Absolutely, and a lot of the folks that we're talking about right now they can't even think about retirement because they don't have any retirement income or savings, to retire. So that, that's something that we haven't even begun to face yet. That's why boomers are continuing to work, because a lot of them are unprepared to retire, and they have to work. So they're struggling through this pandemic, worse than other people. I shouldn't say worse, the same as other people.
Well,
So are there any other questions? Once again, if you have the chat window open so far, that's what people have chosen to do, is to type into the chat window rather than ask to be unmuted. But we have 5 minutes. If you do have any other questions, in fact, I think what I'm going to do is allow everybody to unmute at this point. If you would like to ask a question, and you can unmute yourself, you can ask a question in these last minutes. And then with just a few minutes left, we might start talking about the next meeting. I see we have a few people who have unmuted. Cindy just unmuted. If you have a question.
Question is, what are your thoughts on catering halls versus restaurants, and catering halls operating at a lower capacity like restaurants, and why is it seems just so not fair that they're not even allowed to operate?
Well, I would agree with you, but remember, it's indoor dining, and right now I think are they permanently closed, Cindy, or they're open? Yeah, I don't know if they're permanently closed.
Oh no, I'm sorry, they're not permanently closed. They're only allowed to have 50 or less.
Yeah, 50 people or less, and part of that can't be included in the wait staff. I think that I'm going to a wedding that's indoors. And they're keeping it under 50 next month. It's my nephew, so I think that if they clean their air filtration systems, if they practice social distancing, if they set up more tables, they should be allowed to open up a little more. But they have to be careful. Remember, it's not so much they're opening up more; it's the intelligence of the people who are attending the events to either wear masks or practice social distancing. Remember, there's alcohol, people congregate. So it's behavior that's why the bars are closed. There's the kind of behavior that leads to the spread of the virus. So there's got to be some balance. I agree with you. There's got to be some balance. Those catering halls won't be opening up anymore if they can't do it.
Well, just because if you have a 10,000 square foot ballroom, you should be able to have more than 50 people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't disagree. Look, the malls are able to open up 50% capacity. So there's no reason why the catering facilities can't open up at 50% capacity, net of the employees that they have in there. So you can have a group set of people. But I think whereas with the accepting for the deaths in the nursing home, the governor has done a pretty good job in handling this. I think he's just afraid to open it up further and deal with COVID coming back as a second wave in the fall, when you now have to deal with the flu and some other diseases. I think that's what's causing him angst.
Right, but did you happen to see on the news that Massapequa Chamber of Commerce had a lunch to thank, I can't remember who, but they weren't socially, it was under a tent, it was outside, great, yeah. But the tables weren't socially distanced. And for me, to do logistics to plan an event, that would have been uncomfortable for me. If I was at least in a 10,000 square foot ballroom, very socially distant, I would feel much.
Oh, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you. I mean, for me personally, wearing a mask and socially distancing is like my comfort level, and if it's indoors, I can deal with it as long as people are spread out and I have a mask. The fear is you've got some people still out there who think this is a giant hoax and a joke, and they don't socially distance and they don't wear masks, and that makes it uncomfortable for others who do. But I think that we should find a way to grow out of this pandemic in what you're suggesting in catering halls, because they're a big part of the economy, and these places are the establishments that hire the people who need the work, the poor amongst us, the immigrants among us who don't have the skill sets to work who can work in satellite offices or technology or have Zoom meetings.
I
So
think
we have to find a
question.
way to get them back to work, Cindy.
Mayor, do you have a question?
Yes, Marty, if I understood you correctly, you commented on the inadequacy of the controversial cut in the Suffolk County police budget. What do you think has to be done? What kinds of measures should be done in terms of the Suffolk County budget to get to a stable situation within a reasonable amount of time?
Hi, Mayor. It's been a long time.
Yes,
Good to see you. You look well.
thank you. You too.
I think, look, the police are $600 million out of a $3.2 trillion, rather $600 million out of a $3.2 billion budget. For me, I've always said that in times like this, you get rid of everything that's not health and public safety, public health. Everything else is on the table. And the county executive has to take a look at that. We shouldn't be replicating good services that the towns provide. We ought to take a hard look at that. There's room to cut in the Suffolk County budget, and anything other than public safety and public health has to be on the table.
All right, I think we've come to the point where we're ready to close. And is there any, we'll take one more question if it exists, otherwise we'll close. All right, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. And I want to thank Dr. Cantor for the information that he's been able to give us. He's been very informative. Thank you so much.
Just want to mention the October 9th speaker as well, Ernie, before we sign off.
The October 9th speaker is Patrick Guidisi. He's the business manager of IBEW. He's going to talk about the labor's contribution to a sound economy. And it involves basically having people who make enough money that they could get through a pandemic like this if it happens. But it's much, much more than that. So it's going to be an interesting program. I think we'll have other people from the labor movement in the audience offering questions and some advice. So I think it'll be a good program. Thank you so much, everybody.